When I walked out to my own backyard that Memorial Day morning, I wasn't expecting war. But there she stood, clipboard in one hand, margarita in the other, telling me to leave my own pool. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then I saw the strangers splashing in the water, eating off my grill, and one of them asked me if I was the gardener. That's when I realized this wasn't just a party. It was a full-blown invasion, and the woman behind it? Cheryl, the HOA's newest queen bee. She took over my yard without asking, but what she didn't know was that I had a plan, a quiet one. And it started with a single twist of a hidden valve. It was supposed to be a quiet Memorial Day morning, the kind where the air already smells like charcoal and sunscreen before breakfast even hits the table. The kind of day my wife and I used to cherish before she passed. We'd start with pancakes, drag out the old cooler, and fill it with soda and ice. She'd hang wind chimes in the tree near the shed while I rolled out the grill and opened the pool umbrella. Our neighbors, most of them longtime friends, would wander over for a hamburger and a splash, nothing fancy. Just laughter, stories, and a small way to honor the woman who brought warmth to everything she touched. That was our tradition, a sacred rhythm carved over the years into the soul of our backyard. But this year, I woke up to something else entirely. When I slid the back door open, coffee in hand, what I saw nearly made me drop the mug. A dozen strangers were already in the pool. Loud music blared from a rented speaker system. There were tiki torches, buffet tables, even a banner that read, HOA Kickoff, Let's Make a Splash. And at the center of it all stood Cheryl, clipboard in one hand, drink in the other, like some self-appointed queen of suburbia. And just like that, my quiet day in memory of my wife had turned into a circus. I stepped out barefoot, still in my robe, and was halfway to the patio when Cheryl spotted me. "Excuse me," she called out, tilting her sunglasses down with theatrical flair. "This is a private HOA event. You weren't on the RSVP list." At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed politely, assuming she had mistaken me for a neighbor cutting through. "This is my house," I said, gesturing to the sliding door behind me. "This pool? I built it." Her smile didn't falter, but her tone hardened. "You weren't approved to attend. HO guidelines now include community use clauses for morale events. You're welcome to return after 5 p.m. I stared at her, stunned. Someone I had never seen before was telling me I couldn't be in my own backyard. Guest strangers gawked at me like I was the intruder. A woman whispered, "Is he okay?" Another said, "I thought this was the community clubhouse." I felt invisible, erased, like my years of care, of home ownership, of tradition didn't matter anymore. That stung worse than any insult. Back inside, I sat at the kitchen table in silence, the old folder of property deeds in front of me. I hadn't looked at it in years, but I knew every inch of it by heart. My wife and I had bought this place before the HOA were formed. Our lot was outside their boundaries, a technicality we'd made sure to get in writing back when we were the old folks among younger couples moving in. But like most quiet people, we didn't talk about that. We didn't wave paperwork at anyone. We just minded our business. Until Cheryl showed up. I found a freshly folded piece of paper in the mailbox, one of those informational updates. From the HOL, it was an unofficial amendment draft. Sneaky, almost clever. It suggested that properties adjacent to shared use zones could be temporarily considered extensions for the purpose of morale-building functions. It was underlined in bold, but unsigned. No vote, no formal approval. Just Cheryl's attempt to manipulate a loophole. That's when I knew this wasn't about community. It was about control. I called Margaret. She was a friend, former neighbor, and retired paralegal with a sharper tongue than most defense attorneys. "I've been waiting for this day," she said, half joking. She came over with a large binder, a bottle of iced tea, and a fury that could melt vinyl siding. Together, we went over every clause, every parcel outline, every note from the original subdivision paperwork. Cheryl had no authority. The HOA had no jurisdiction. My property was mine legally, irrefutably, and permanently. "People like Cheryl," Margaret said, "count on silence. They bet you'll get tired before they do, but this isn't about paperwork. It's about pride." She was right. My wife used to say, "Don't let loud people write your story." I had let Cheryl take over my yard, my peace, and now my wife's memory. But not for long. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell. That's not how I was raised. Instead, I waited. I walked back outside around 1 p.m. The music had gotten louder, the crowd rowdier. Cheryl was giving some overblown speech about revitalizing neighborhood unity, and people actually clapped. I walked past them unnoticed, slipping behind the shed where I kept the pull pump and maintenance valves. There, nestled under a small lockbox I never used, was the long-handled valve wrench, old, reliable. I built this pool myself, back when my knees didn't ache and gas was 90 cents a gallon. I knew every pipe, every outlet, and I knew how to make the water leave quietly. I knelt down, turned the valve a quarter click, and walked away. Nothing dramatic, no hiss. Just the slow start of a silent reckoning. At first, no one noticed. Kids kept splashing. Cheryl kept holding court near the tiki table. I sat by the grill, pretending to check my phone while, bit by bit, the water disappeared. It was slow, steady, perfect. By 2:30, someone asked why the pool felt cooler than usual. Cheryl laughed it off, blamed the filter cycling. By 3 o'clock, one of the floats touched the pool floor. A child started crying when their knees scraped the concrete. "It's normal," Cheryl shouted, though her smile cracked. By 3:15, someone tripped trying to step out and spilled fruit punch across the patio. I sipped my tea. Sweet, cold, satisfying. Cheryl stormed toward me. "What did you do?" she hissed through her teeth. I tilted my head, just watching the community enjoy itself. "Isn't that what HOA events are all about?" Her face went pale. People were leaving. Whispers turned to questions. "Wait, whose house is this? I thought the HOA approved it." I stood up slowly, brushed off my shirt, and raised my voice just enough. "No approval, no jurisdiction, no right. This is my property, and you've all been lied to." Silence. Not even the speaker buzzed. Cheryl sputtered, tried to spin a new excuse. "He's just bitter. He's always been Difficult. I held up my phone, thumb on the screen. Want to read the HOA president's messages? He's on his way. And right on cue, Brian's car rolled up the drive with a police officer in the passenger seat. Brian took one look and shook his head. Cheryl, again? The officer calmly asked, is this a public or private gathering? Brian nodded. Toward me. Private. Very private. Very unapproved. Cheryl tried to interrupt, but the officer wasn't interested. Ma'am, he said, you are being formally trespassed. If you return here without permission, charges can be filed. Her shoulders slumped, her jaw twitched, but she said nothing. Brian turned to her gently. We'll be reviewing your position in the HOA. You're no longer permitted to organize events. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just turned and walked toward the gate. One of the guests whispered, "Yikes," as she passed. The banner tore in the wind behind her. Her parade was over. I stood there as the sun dipped low, watching the last of the water spiral down the drain. The floaties lay deflated, the food untouched, and there she went, just a shadow, retreating into the very silence she tried to replace with noise. I didn't feel victorious. I felt still, peaceful, like a long breath after holding it too long. I walked around the edge of the empty pool and placed the valve wrench back on its hook. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. I hadn't drained a pool. I had reclaimed something far more sacred, respect. The days that followed were quiet. In the best way. No more surprise events. No more strangers. Just birds, breeze, and the occasional chuckle from a neighbor driving by. Word had spread fast. Someone posted a video on the community Facebook group, Cheryl yelling poolside while the water slowly vanished behind her. Someone added dramatic music. The comments were gold. Corinne gets drenched in ego. I didn't post it. I didn't. Me too. The truth has a funny way of floating to the top. Even Margaret said, "You didn't just make a point, you wrote a new chapter for this whole neighborhood." A week later, I hosted my own barbecue. Nothing big. Just a few folks from down the street, real friends, burgers, light music. Someone brought a float shaped like a flamingo and named it Cheryl. We laughed too hard at that. Kids reenacted the infamous draining scene. And under the string lights, someone toasted to dignity and to fences, real and imagined. We all raised our glasses. I looked around at the faces, the joy, the comfort. This was community. And Cheryl, she passed by once. Her SUV rolled slow past the gate, eyes hidden behind dark windows. She didn't stop. She didn't wave, just kept driving. She wouldn't be back, she knew now. Knew that there are some lines even a clipboard can't cross. And deep down, she learned what happens when you mistake someone's home for your stage. They just might pull the plug and let the water do the talking.